Hi everyone. In today's video, we're going to take a look at the apps script method getDataRange, as well as a couple techniques for simplifying getting and setting data into and from a spreadsheet. So in this example, we have our inventory data, and if our quantity is 0, we want to add an asterisk to the name. We want to change our status from active to inactive, and we want to uncheck our checkbox here. To accomplish this, we're going to use app script. And you may have, so here's our script, and you may have something that looks very similar to this to accomplish the same task. Because when you're dealing with hundreds or thousands of items, you don't want this. It's not really good to be done manually. Here we only have 12, but you'll see the same concept applies. All right, so first we get our data. And that currently is done as we get our last row here, and then we get our names column, our quantity status, and all of the columns we want to look at for criteria as well as change. We get all those different columns just to see what's happening here. Then we loop over our data, and every time a row needs changed, we make 3 calls to the spreadsheet service to place that data. So in this particular example, we are, and actually I have a couple here that aren't really necessary for this example, so I'm making a couple extra calls that aren't relevant for this, but just taking a look at this right now, we're making 5 calls to get the information, and then for each row, 3. So in this instance, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're making 12 calls to the spreadsheet service to set all of the information. What we're going to look at right now is how to do 1 call to get the data and 1 call to set all the data. So instead of our 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, instead of our 17 calls to the sheet service, we're going to make 2. And it's going to significantly speed up our sheet. But let's take a quick look at what this does. So we're going to run our script. Great, here we go. If it's 0, does all of this stuff. So we can see it works right now. But let's first eliminate all of these and replace it with 1 call. So we're just going to get data, get data range, get values. There you go. And depending on your needs, you may want to separate the header. You might not want the header information here. Let's say if you're looking for a blank row, for example, this would not return blank. We could keep it here because we're looking for a number. But anyway, let's separate our values. Just good practice. So there you go. We just got rid of it. We only want to see everything from the first row down. So everything from here down. Okay. Now we can actually keep most of our same loop here, but we need to change some names. All right. And our values, our quantity is actually, so we have a row, but the column has changed. Actually, it wasn't pulling from a column before, it was just getting rid of an array. Now we are looking at whatever row we're in, we want to look at the second column because it's a 0-based index. So that's quantity. And the name is actually in the right place. So right now we've just eliminated all of this, and this will work as is. Run a quick test. Have a look. Running. There we go. Did what it's supposed to do. Let's undo that. However, we're still making 12 calls to the spreadsheet service to place all of the changed variables here. So let's get rid of those. I'm going to keep them there for a moment just so we can look at them. But so we can work with just the array itself. You may be familiar with pulling these values. So right now, a couple times here, we're actually looking at the array and seeing a value. So we say, hey, we're looking at the values array, this row, this column, basically saying, for all intents and purposes, just a visual reference, you're saying, here's our array, and we're going row by row and looking at each individual column within that row. So here, row 1, is this less than 0? Nope, Is it less than 0? Yes. All right. So let's do this. And that's how you get the data. But you can also replace the data in an array. So instead of getting it here, we're going to say this, because we're going to get the old name. This is getting the old name. And we're going to replace this, we'll call it a cell, just for a frame of reference. And we're going to say equals. We're going to put it on the other side of this equal sign, which is saying we want to change this value. We're going to change it to new name. Now we want to do this for the other values as well. So here, our status, this is in row 5, and because this is 0 base index, we actually go down. So it's, or sorry, not row 5, column 5. It's in 4. We're going to call this inactive. And same thing here. So 6 becomes 5. And this is going to equal false. So there you go. We just eliminated all of those calls. So instead of doing 3 calls per row, we're doing no calls per row actually at the moment. And we're going to, but let's take a look at this before we put the values in. Just see what our output is. So we're good. Oh, actually, yeah, that's fine. All right, let's run it. And then let's look at the log here. So you can see the potential output adds an asterisk, changes to inactive, false, and does it for all the appropriate columns where the quantity is 0. And if the quantity is not 0, it doesn't do anything. So that's what the output could be. So now we've just pulled in our data from the spreadsheet in one call, looped over the array, changed the values within the array, and now we're going to output the values in one call. So all what took 17 calls before is now going to take 2. And if we had hundreds or thousands of rows to deal with, that would be potential, thousands or tens of thousands of calls to the sheet service. And instead of tens of thousands or hundreds, thousands or hundreds, you're dealing with still only 2 calls, regardless of the size of your data. So here we go. But remember, so before we pick our range, we need to remember that our values here are going to start, like we got rid of the header. So when we place our values back in, we want it to start where our values start. So this is row 2, column 1. So we're going to start row 2, column 1. This is how far down, how many rows of data. And now we want to know how long our column is. And so you can pick any row. In this case, we'll say the first one. You could call this anything, but you always know that 0 is going to be there. We want the length. And we're going to set values. I already had that name there. Awesome. There you go. So that should do it. Let's test it real quick. And done. So we have accomplished all of this. What took 17 calls to the sheet service now takes 2. I hope this video has been helpful for you. Stay tuned for more. Thanks.